Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I'm your host, Charles. Along with me, as always, my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. How you doing today, Jacob?
I am swell, Charles. I'm excited. We're back. Another episode.
We're back.
You've got a new pitch.
So good.
You know,
we do.
That's always my favorite thing.
I have a new pitch. It may not be the longest pitch I've ever had in the world, which is maybe why I started the intro immediately so that I could put the cold open after the intro and stall.
Well, see, here's the thing, is that you've said many times this may not be the longest pitch, and then you've proceeded to give me like an hour and a half that I have to cut down to like 40 minutes, so I don't believe you, is what I'm telling you.
That's fair. Alright, here's how I'm gonna do this this pitch. I am going to tell you the episode. We're gonna walk through the opening episode, and then we're gonna go through the characters, and then the premise, and then we're gonna come up with some episode ideas for after that, because I've only written one episode idea.
Okay.
Alright? Does that sound like a plan to you, my friend?
I'm interested to see where this went, because the show obviously is titled The Fridge, which is...
The Fridge.
Leaves, I don't know, a lot open. I don't know where you'd take that. I personally have a feeling, but we'll see if I'm correct in a second.
Well, my initial idea, because I've been wanting to do a superhero show, right? And sometimes when you really want to do a show,
we had the same idea.
You just kind of, you just kind of work that idea into the title. So the idea was going to be that the main character was a supervillain who would go through like superhero graveyards and steal body parts from these superheroes, right? And then he would put them in his like magic fridge that he had in his house that would keep them preserved. And so he would attach those limbs to himself, thus it like infusing himself with the superpowers of the dead superheroes, right? And so he'd be this kind of like horrible homunculus Frankenstein's monster style of guy, but he's the new superhero in town, you know? Mm-hmm. And so he'd have like Wonder Woman's fucking arm, and then like a huge like the Hulk's leg and stuff, and he'd look like a weird mix match of all these people, but he's a supervillain, superhero style guy.
Yeah.
But I was kind of like, I couldn't get myself that excited for that superhero thing. I was like, I kind of wanted to do more of a straightaway superhero vigilante style situation, so I'm not gonna do that, right? We're gonna leave that alone, right? We're doing a different show. But it is also titled The Fridge, and it does have a magic refrigerator in it. Ooh. So, Jackson is hacking a man apart on his filthy kitchen table next to his meal of German Tanner kebab. He has taken his rusty cleaver and old hacksaw, and he is just brutally and viciously ripping this man apart, limb by limb. Just horrible, vile shit. He's got blood dripping from his hands when he picks up his German Doner kebab and takes a big bite, right? He places down his oily, disgusting tools onto his filthy kitchen table, and he picks up the man's head, right? It's this older man, right? Probably in his mid-50s, bearded. He's lived a hard life. You know, he's got long, raggedy, unkempt hair, right? And Jackson, who is our main character, if you hadn't figured that out, picks up the head, and he takes it and places it gently inside of his refrigerator. Now, this refrigerator may look relatively normal on the outside, kind of like a 1950s style Smeg refrigerator, if you know what those look like.
Big latch on the outside that would kill children because they would get locked in there.
Kids would get locked inside because they're stupid. You know, that sort of thing, right? It's got like refuse and like kind of oils dripping from it. It's definitely old, and it kind of looks like it may not even be working, right? And as he opens it, the light illuminates the room, and you can kind of see inside of his living room. You've already seen the disgusting kitchen table. You see the dead body that's been hacked apart, and you see he doesn't really have any wall art. He has a blanket on the floor, right? This guy is living rough. He is basically in an abandoned shack that he calls home, and the only thing that has any power is the refrigerator. There is no light, there is no, like, heating, nothing, right?
Okay.
He opens the refrigerator and he gently places the head onto the top shelf. And he plugs a bunch of tubes and sort of like meat-looking wires, you know, sort of very organic-looking wires into the bottom of the head. And the head, like after a second, this the wires start pumping this black ooze through him, and we could see this black ooze being pulled through the wires that kind of go all around the entire refrigerator, and then we follow the wires as they go down. The black ooze infuses into this pair of detached lungs that begun to open up and start moving again, and the head of this man opens its eyes and it begins to scream. It doesn't know what's going on. It's totally freaked out, and he's like, shh. Jackson tells it to calm down. He says, hey, it's okay, right? And then Jackson slowly but surely flops the man's heart and his liver onto either side of him, and the heart begins to beat again, and the liver begins to twitch and move ever so slightly. And then that's when we hear 3 other voices, and we look up at the shelf that's above the one with the recently reanimated head, and we see 3 other heads, all of whom are attached to the same lung devices as the first head. And these heads are, they're more well-kempt, they're very casual at talking, they're not freaking out at all. And these 3 heads begin to explain to this recently decapitated man what's happening. Jackson has removed his head and removed his internal organs that have any sort of value, and he's going to be selling them to the Russian mob. Jackson doesn't, just wanted to let him know. He felt it is probably polite to let him know, and the head begins to protest. He gets angry, and he starts to scream and shout and beg for forgiveness and help from these other 3 decapitated heads who are kind of laughing and joking along. They're not really interested in what this head has to say. And as Jackson removes the head from the fridge, I have this really cool shot in my head of, like, we have the camera inside the fridge and Jackson's hands around the head and the head screaming and yelling and shouting, and then the camera follows the head as it leaves the fridge, and as soon as it leaves the inside of the refrigerator, the head stops talking. The blood begins to ooze out of the bottom of it, right? It's just another decapitated head. Jackson opens the trash can, drops the head in, closes the fridge door, right? That's when we do the opening little movie, right? The, like, title sequence where we see this heart sitting inside of a jar in the inside the refrigerator, and as Jackson opens the door, the light illuminates inside the refrigerator, the heart starts to beat, and then it turns to camera, and you see in the veins of the heart this, like, black ooze that spells out the fridge. And that's
very nice.
That's how it opens. Yeah.
Maybe there's, like, you know how, like, hearts have, like, the little, you'll see, like, sometimes in, like, monster movies, you'll see, like, a big chunk or throb of blood go up one of the veins of it. Maybe it's, like, spelling out the letters as it's going through.
Yes, exactly. Perfect. So now I'm gonna get into explaining what's happening, right? And who our central characters are. That's not the end of the first episode, obviously. That's just the intro. But I realize that there's a lot.
All TV shows end on the title sequence in the first, after 2 minutes, you know?
Yeah. So
great.
Jackson
if TV show was just the cold open, that was it, and then it just went to the credits.
And that was the end. Yes, that would be great. I'd watch that show. If it was like 3 minutes long.
Yeah.
Every episode 3. Oh, it's so easy to binge.
That's what Instagram and TikToks are now.
Yeah.
Instagram Reels.
And so we have Jackson, who you probably have figured out is a serial killer and a violent misanthropic loner who lives in a shack at the edge of town. Our other 3 main characters, who will be the most talkative of the people in the show, are Florence, who is a young woman who is constantly encouraging Jackson's most vicious, violent, and sadistic desires. She is constantly wanting him to hurt people more, kill more people, all this stuff, right? Our second character is Sophie, another young lady who is interested in helping Jackson reincorporate himself into society. She notices that he's withdrawn and sad, and he's taken himself out of civilization very deliberately, and she is constantly trying to convince him to go back, go on a date, make friends, try and become another member of society, right?
Yeah.
And then we have Nigel, who is a man, and he was a priest before his head was viciously removed by Jackson, and he is constantly criticizing Jackson's morals and his violent behavior, and just constantly belittling him and insulting him for being a vile, degenerate piece of garbage, right? Yeah. And those are our three main characters. And if you haven't figured out, they're representative of different parts of Jackson's subconscious, right? Each head represents a different part of who he is. And so we have the main meat of the show will be Jackson killing people, bringing them back, and talking with the heads, and all sorts of fun, crazy hijinks that they get into with the refrigerator. Because the fridge is a magic fridge. It has a connection to a deep, dark, dangerous, eldritch power that Jackson barely understands, but he does know that anything, and I mean anything, placed inside of the fridge will stay alive. Doesn't matter how old it is, doesn't matter how long it's in the fridge. If it's in the fridge, it will live, you know? That's how the heart works, that's how the liver keeps, so he decides that the best way to use this is to sell organs to the Russian mob.
Clearly, number one way.
Well, he likes killing people. The fridge demands blood sacrifice, but it also demands money. It demands power. It demands, things that people find valuable. And so Jackson, once he's satiated his own bloodlust and the bloodlust from the fridge, decides to sell the organs and give the money, surrender it to the freezer. And the freezer is kind of like the deepest level of his subconscious, like this monstrous thing that has no form and has no voice, and yet it interacts and affects everything he does and every element of his life. And we never see what's inside the freezer. We only ever see Jackson put money inside the freezer, right?
Okay.
That's it. And so Jackson, after the cold open, he takes the liver and he takes the heart, and he goes and he's going to make a drop for those organs in order to get his money, right? And as he's walking, we cut to Officer Laura Johnson, a low-level cop who has been tracking the deaths of several homeless people in their small coastal town. Now, she is a uniformed police officer who has a theory that these homeless people that have been disappearing all over the city have been murdered or kidnapped by the same person. But no one in her department is interested in her theories because, again, she is just a uniformed cop. She has no real authority, and she's not a detective, right? And throughout the show, we will be very obviously introduced to the idea that she has not really gotten the detective part of her job down yet, She's not a bad cop, but she's not a detective yet.
She's got no investigative mind,
Exactly.
Everything's
she's working on
her head.
Oh, man, what a coincidence. That sort of thing. And so we'll have her, and she's working in her office, and she, we see her, getting herself hyped up, and she finally, she and she opens the door, and she goes into her commissioner's office, and she says, "Commissioner, I have this huge case I've been working on," right? And she's got, this big, heavy, thick manila folder, and all these photos, and all this stuff, and there's this masked man who keeps appearing. He's never seen in the same photo as these homeless people, but he's always in the same area the night they could disappear, right? All this stuff. And the chief just dismisses her outright. He's like, I'm uninterested in your theories, Johnson. Like, get back to traffic cop duty, which is your job. You're not paid to find connections that don't exist. You're paid to put tickets on parked cars. So get to it, right? He's very dismissive and very angry that she would even think that she's at a level where she can do this sort of stuff, right?
If you wanted it to be funny, you could have it like she comes up with these crazy theories all the time, and then he'll like list off like 5 other ones, like, oh yeah, you're talking about
that'd be good.
The arcade strangler and the Chuck E. Cheese,
the Mothman mayhem murders, all this stuff. Yeah. All these ridiculous theories. I know I got those wrong, but this one, I swear, I've got a gut feeling. You had a gut feeling at all of them, Johnson. Get out right now. And so she leaves the office, dejected, angry, unhappy, you know. She just... she clocks out, right, gets in her car, and she grips the steering wheel and kind of looks at herself. She shakes her head, and she decides to drive back to the scene of the crime. You know, and she notices this very strange looking, skinny, weird looking dude walking with 2 packages, right? And she decides, oh, this guy's looks like he's going somewhere. And so she follows him, right? And she sees him sit on a bench. He smokes a cigarette and he looks at his watch and he's not really paying very much attention. He puts the 2 packages down on the bench, right? He picks up a lunch bag, right, that was left there, and he walks off, right? And Johnson is kind of like, huh, that's weird. And then she sees somebody come and pick up the 2 packages and walk off in the opposite direction, right? If you didn't get it, that's Jackson, who dropped off the packages, right? And she decides it is a very good idea to follow the guy who picked up the packages, right? So she was this close to Jackson, but she just went the other way, you know? And so she follows the guy who picked up the packages, and she sees him, you know, get in his car, and he drives to this warehouse. We see this, like, very highfalutin, very wealthy, well-to-do guy go into the warehouse, and then a few minutes later, a bunch of guys in lab coats go into the warehouse, and she's like, oh, this is an organ transplant place. This is the Russian mob is doing organ transplants here. All right. I need to call it in. And, you know, she actually, no, I can't. This is the first break in this case I've gotten, right? Why would the guy who used to be there all the time disappear and all of a sudden somebody's got his organs? Has to be the guy who dropped him off. But I didn't follow him. I followed the other dude. Fuck, right? So Johnson is like, she's got her first break in the case, but she's pissed off that she forgot it, that she followed the wrong lead. She goes home and she just pours herself a glass of whiskey and drinks alone. And as she closes the refrigerator in her house, you know, getting rid, like, she gets like a beer out of the fridge and she closes it. We cut to Jackson, Matt Shot, opening the refrigerator, and he starts having another conversation with his 3 severed heads, and we see other parts, bits and pieces of people inside of the fridge, like a hand here, a foot there, right? Maybe some of a torso, right? Just laying about this fridge, and it's disgusting. It is like a frat boy's fridge times a million. There's stains in every single corner of it. There's oils and goos and slimes leaking everywhere. It's fucking vile, right? And Jackson's just chatting with these 3 severed heads, and, you know, he's eating a sandwich that he made, right? And it's, you know, he's eating off of a plate that's covered in blood and viscous viscera, right? Yeah. And as he closes the fridge, he you know, steels himself. He kind of takes a deep breath. He opens the freezer really fast, puts the cash down, closes the freezer, right? And we just hear a scratching inside the freezer. Oh. Not chewing, not like anything violent or howling, just a very light delicate scratching on the walls of the freezer, and Jackson like puts his head in his hands and he falls asleep on the ground. He doesn't even have a mattress, he just has a blanket. And so he closes his eyes and he goes to sleep in front of his fridge, which, because it's one of the 1950s fridges, it doesn't close all the way, and so it always has that little shimmer of light that's kind of illuminating the fridge door. And that's how Jackson goes to sleep, and that's the end of the first episode of The Fridge.
Oh.
Right?
Okay.
So that's the premise of the show, and that's the first episode. Serial killer, he's got a fridge that's magic. Or is it magic? He doesn't know, because he seems to think it's magic, but he's also fucking crazy. So, and I never want to reveal it. In my mind, it doesn't work nearly as well if we reveal that actually it is a magic fridge or it's not a magic fridge, right? And my ideas besides that are in the finale episode. I think Johnson should find him. She discovers his hideout. She goes in. She opens the fridge, and we never see what she sees inside the fridge. We just see this like face of horror and disgust like run across her face. And then she closes the fridge again, and she has like this very violent and tumultuous showdown with Jackson, because they're both kind of the same person in a way, in that they both are totally unwilling to just do what they're told.
Yeah.
Right? They have to do it their own way. And so that they kind of connect on that level, but Johnson is like, I can't. You're a killer. You're a monster. You know, I have to put you down. Right? And so the show ends with her shooting him. But maybe we could have like a final finale where his head is placed inside of the fridge and then closed, and we'll see what happens. Ooh.
Okay, what I think would be neat is if after she kills him, right? She goes to the fridge, she like vomits when she opens that or something, and maybe she's like trying to, she puts some gloves on, tries to get out all the heads. And what you could do is that then she'll open the freezer. And when she opens the like, there'll be a thing throughout the show where, like, he never opens the freezer for longer than a second. And the heads will talk about this. They're like, well, you know, don't open the freezer for longer than a second. Don't open it for longer than a second. And she'll open the freezer, and she'll open it all the way, which you're also not supposed to do. And she'll look straight into it for way longer than you're supposed to. And then you could either cut to the credits there and then have, like, a post-credit scene where, like, another head, like a masked figure, adds another head to the freezer, and it's Jackson's head.
It's Jackson. Yeah.
So it's implied that, like,
that a lot.
You know, maybe she's the killer now, and the freezer.
Yeah,
has
the
some
freezer
sort of
has driven her mad.
evil quality to it.
Or the Russian mob got angry at Jackson and they decided to kill him and just put his head in the freezer as a piece of little, you know, poetic justice, you know? The other idea that I wanted to have in the show is the three heads, right? They, throughout the show, are slowly but surely, like, working together, and they're, like, moving around with their chins and their teeth, and they're putting together a body inside of the fridge with all of the discarded body parts. And so, like, within the latter half of the season, this, like, horrible fucking three-headed homunculus of all these different body parts, like, emerges from the fridge, and it tries to kill Jackson at first, and then it's kind of like a baby in that it can't, like, keep its head up, it doesn't know how to walk yet, it doesn't have any muscles. And so throughout the show, Jackson sort of nurses this horrific homunculus baby monster until it like sort of becomes his butler. That's his Alfred, you know?
Is this horrific creature thing.
Yeah. It just, and it still has the three heads and they still talk to him, but its body is a different thing entirely because it's all three of these people's ideas going at once, you know? And so it can't decide to do anything. And so it's just kind of this horrible little homunculus monster thing that wanders around his apartment, his house, just getting into trouble, you know?
Another idea I just had is to help what's her first name? Is it Laura again? I forgot. Laura Johnson?
Yeah, Laura.
Laura, to help her find out about Jackson. What would be cool is that, so you have that guy that dies in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
It'd be kind of neat maybe if one of his fingers gets severed and it's like on the floor next to the fridge. And maybe when Jackson opens the freezer, like a little chunk of ice falls and it like hits the finger, and now this finger is alive, and this finger like crawls out of this like, terrible shack, and it finds Laura, and it's like helping lead her to Jackson. It's like, it's kind of like it's the literal lead of...
Yeah. It's just like she keeps it like in her pocket or on a necklace or whatever, and every time she like needs a direction to go to, she like puts it on a table, and it's like, all right, where do I need to go? Show me.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Yeah. It's kind of a shorter episode this week. Well, I'm not done, but the other idea I did have, the problem with this show is it was kind of hard to make it episodic because it's like very specific. But I did have an idea where Jackson kills a concert pianist and then slices off the concert pianist's hands, and then puts the hands in the fridge and slices off his own hands, and then reattaches the concert pianist's hands to his arms.
Now he can play
so
piano.
He has to. He plays the piano beautifully, but he can no longer murder because he doesn't have a murderer's hands. He has a pianist's hands, and so he tries to kill someone, and he's just like wimpily, weakly, like slapping at them instead of strangling them.
Yeah.
But that's that's a funny episode. That's the funny episode. But yeah, this kind of black comedy horror shtick. The thing I was reading, the thing that most inspired the show was Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, which is similar a lot of ways as his loner, and he lives alone in a shack, and he has this wall that he has to keep painted in blood, and if the blood dries, like a horrible monster comes through. But that comic gets really weird and esoteric and gets like Johnny goes to heaven and hell and all this stuff, but we're not doing that. This will remain very much earth-based, and the only thing that will be weird and sort of out of the normal realm of possibility will be the fridge. Everything else will just be standard, like police hunting killer trying to evade the police situation, except for the 3 talking heads that eventually turn into a horrible monster baby person, Yeah.
And you could use the Mafia as a big misdirect as well.
Yeah.
Like, they can be, like, a big focus of her investigation, and, they'll take down, it would be like a, halfway through the season, she'll take down the Mafia or whatever, and the killings will still be happening. And she's, like, trying to, figure out what is going on. To figure out
why.
So it has nothing to do with the Mafia. It's like an independent killer who was just selling to the Mafia, and she'll be like, they'll be interrogating some Mafia guy, and they'll be like, I've never seen him. He's just a fucking psycho. He chops these people up. I mean, you should see the mess we get. I don't know how we can put it together, but the shit just works somehow. I mean, I've been cutting and pasting people together for years, and I've never gotten hearts in such bad condition, yet they still somehow work.
They still keep pumping. These people live for years afterwards. I don't get it, but hey, how much time am I getting off my sentence if I tell you any more, right? Like that sort of thing. Because I do think it would be it is a fun misdirect to have like it kind of be a crime procedural, and then it's like, actually nope, it's weird magical realism serial killer times.
Yeah. And I see. Does Jackson have a normal life outside of his? Does he have any sort of life outside of his killing? Like, does he go to the grocery store and stuff?
I would say Jackson exists within a world, right? He's not an active participant in any sort of civilization, but he is still like a human being, and so he still needs to eat and drink and like piss and stuff.
Yeah.
So he has, but that's most of his time outside of the shack is spent murdering,
Okay.
he doesn't really do very much else because he can't, for whatever reason. I don't know if we ever will get into his backstory, but for whatever reason, he's just incapable of facing the real world, and the only thing that brings him any peace is being this horrible fucking butcher. You know?
Okay. And the place he's in, is this like a junkyard? Is this like, because I'm assuming he's in a city, right? Is he like just in like is he like in an abandoned home? What kind of building is it?
It's like when you're driving through a suburban neighborhood and you see there, like, all these houses are lovely and nice, and then there's one house that's just abandoned, and all the windows are smashed and it's covered in ivy, right? Like, why is this place here? And no one knows. No one's ever seen anyone enter it. No one's ever seen anyone, like, live there or anything like that. But it's a house that's been there for decades, That sort of thing.
Okay.
So sort of like the horror hiding in plain sight, right? Okay. Yeah. But that's the show. That's The Fridge.
Do you want to hear what I thought you were going to do?
Yes, I would.
So I thought you were going to the superhero angle. That was my guess. I thought it was going to be okay, so when I said The Fridge, my initial idea was like people getting fridged, which is like a very, it's like a famous trope in comics where like somebody exists and dies just to build the hero's character, or like the heroine's character. It's like their whole entire existence is just to build somebody else's character. So like, the husband, the wife, the girlfriend who die early in the story. The famous one, the reason it's called Fridged, obviously, is because of is it Kyle Rayner? Kyle Rayner, where his girlfriend gets killed and stuffed in a fridge. Murdered and stuffed inside a fridge. Which was just like a gross, over the top, like, okay, we get it.
For no reason, the term coined by Gail Simone, famous comic book writer. He's written a lot of good stuff.
My thought process of where, like, I thought you were gonna go, or maybe you like, or at least my idea with the title was that it'd be like a society of like these people who are like the fridgers. Like they're the people that get fridged, and they just fake their deaths to build character for these heroes.
That is a funny idea. That's a really funny idea. Of just like this like underground civilization, like underground like group of people, secret society of people who are just like, of course I didn't die. It's stuffed inside a fridge? That's stupid.
It's the dumbest way anyone could go.
Yeah. What, did the serial killer or murderer or supervillain or whatever take 40 minutes to take everything out of the fridge, put me inside, then put everything back in the fridge? It doesn't make any sense, dipshit.
It would probably be like an organization under the government who are like, all right, we need to like, we need to somehow like sort of control these superheroes and make sure they're good and they're not gonna go, they're gonna like, do things for the greater good. So they have all these, like attractive women that work for them, and attractive men who just, go out, seduce these superheroes, and then die in these crazy ways to motivate them into, being good and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know I didn't have any idea beyond the premise of that, though. I don't know where you really take that. But I like your serial killer story a lot. I like the three heads in the fridge constantly talking to this dude. I think it has a really gross yet like funny element to it. It's like it's like horror, like this like crazy body horror, but also just like weirdly comedic. Like just like
sort of peanut gallery humor. Like peanut gallery sort of people, and it's gross and weird and it doesn't make any sense.
I think it would do really well with like if you had like you did it in live action and it was if the heads weren't CGI, if they were like animatronic or something, we had like the sort of
like those Disney Haunted Mansion animatronics.
That would work as well. I was thinking, I think it's Pan's Labyrinth. Like that kind of style, like the way the guy with the big fingers, eyes. I don't remember what he looked like.
The eyes on his palms.
Yeah,
the freaky guy. Yeah,
that kind of style for like the way they look. They're sort of just crazy, over the top. Like obviously this couldn't be real, but it's like so crazily
It's so
mesh
well
of
done
flesh
and so gross.
yeah,
Yeah.
very stylized.
I like that. Sort of maybe a stop motion animation almost.
Yeah, so it looks so over the top, but realistic enough. But it's clearly not realish.
Not actual people.
But
yeah.
it's so stupid looking that it's scary, but also funny.
I like that. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I've been your host, Charles. Along with me has always been my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. If you like what you heard here and you want to hear more, please give us a like, a follow, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog, tell your cat, and remember, we will be right back here next week with a brand new televisual series that will be titled, pick a number, Jake, 1 through 4.
2.
You will be writing Fearless Remembrance, the most difficult title I had.
Fearless Remembrance. Okay, I like that.
Yeah. Fun, very
Could be a lot of
very
things I
open,
can get from there.
very poetic. It'll be fun.
Fearless Remembrance.
Yeah. All right, well, next week we'll be pitching a TV show titled Fearless Remembrance, or a movie, or whatever. Miniseries. We'll find out. It'll be fun. Thank you all, and please have a good night.